What's happening right now is something straight out of a dystopian novel. Picture this. The financial landscape is akin to a tempest brewing on the horizon. Ominous clouds gathering, signaling an impending storm of unprecedented magnitude. I don't say this lightly. I'm not here to spread panic or peddle doom and gloom. But the truth is we're facing a perfect storm, and if you're not worried yet, you ought to be. Let's dissect this storm, shall we? Bonds, the cornerstone of financial stability for decades, are inflated to the point of bursting a bubble of historic proportions. Property markets in places like Korea and New Zealand, they're soaring to dizzying heights, teetering on the edge of bubble territory. And stocks? Sure, some tech giants like Amazon and Tesla seem unstoppable, but scratch beneath the surface and you'll find an unsettling truth. Many stocks are riding on thin air, not yet fully immersed in the bubble, but dangling precariously close. Now what's left when everything else is riding the wave of inflation? Commodities. Silver down 60%, sugar down a staggering 70%. These are not just numbers, they're the aftershocks of an economic earthquake waiting to happen. Amidst the chaos of money printing and market frenzy, commodities stand as the last bastion of sanity, the only refugee from the storm that threatens to engulf us all. So here's the reality check. Brace yourselves because the storm is coming, and if you're not prepared, you'll be swept away in its wake. Let me level with you, I've got skin in the game. Stocks in China, Russia, Japan, and beyond. I'm not here to tell you to hit the panic button, but I'm not about to close my eyes and pretend everything's fine either. See, I'm not buying blind. Not anymore. Because deep down, I know this ride can't go on forever. It's like watching a fireworks display, dazzling and breathtaking, but you know, those bursts of light will fade, leaving behind nothing but darkness. So here's the deal. I'm not shorting, but I'm not buying blindly either. I'm waiting for those golden opportunities, the ones that scream really, really good from the mountaintops. Because mark my words, when this house of cards comes crashing down, it's going to make the Great Recession look like child's play. Brace yourselves, folks, because the storm clouds are gathering, and when the deluge hits, it'll be a bear market unlike anything we've ever seen. Let me paint you a picture of why this time around is not just different, but downright worse. Cast your mind back to the chaos of 2008, when the global economy teetered on the brink of collapse under the weight of excessive debt. Now fast forward to today, and what do we see? Debt levels soaring to unprecedented heights, stretching far beyond the realm of reason. It's not just a problem in one corner of the world, it's a pandemic of indebtedness gripping nations from every corner of the globe. Even China, once seen as a beacon of financial prudence, finds itself drowning in a sea of red ink. And here's the kicker. When the storm clouds gathered in 2008, we had China swoop in as the unlikely hero, bailing out economies left and right. But this time, China's not riding in on a white horse. They're grappling with their own financial woes, leaving us without a safety net. And let's not even entertain the idea of North Korea stepping up to the plate, cash-strapped and isolated. They're hardly in a position to offer a helping hand. So buckle up, because we're in uncharted territory facing a crisis that's not just different, but potentially cataclysmic. I'm not about to sugarcoat it. The future looks bleak, and I don't trust those at the helm to navigate us out of this mess. It's like watching a train hurtling towards a collapsed bridge, and the engineers are too busy arguing about who's to blame to hit the brakes. As for me, well, I might be able to ride out this storm, but I shudder to think of the burden my children will bear thanks to the incompetence of our so-called leaders. Now you mention the possibility of a debt crisis, inflation, or perhaps both. Here's the harsh reality. We're staring down the barrel of a loaded gun, and the trigger could be pulled at any moment. History serves as a chilling reminder of what happens when economies spiral out of control. The 1930s saw the perfect storm of economic collapse, currency devaluation, and the horrors of war. I'm not here to peddle doomsday prophecies, but let's not bury our heads in the sand either. The writing's on the wall, and unless we wake up to the reality of our situation, we're doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. Let's talk straight. I've got little faith in the people steering the ship. They're too busy pointing fingers to see the iceberg dead ahead. Picture this. We're on a train hurtling towards a collapsed bridge, and the crew's too busy bickering to slam on the brakes. I might weather this storm, but what about our kids? They'll be left picking up the shattered pieces of a world torn apart by the incompetence of those in charge. Now about this debt crisis and inflation looming over us like a dark cloud. It's not just a distant threat, it's a loaded gun pointed squarely at our heads. History's not shy about showing us what happens when economies go off the rails. The 1930s? A nightmare of economic collapse, currency devaluation, and the horrors of war. I'm not here to scaremonger, but we can't afford to stick our heads in the sand. The signs are clear. If we don't wake up to reality, we're condemned to relive the nightmares of the past. Let's talk about the social fallout of this impending crisis. You're right to be concerned. When the chips are down, society doesn't always hold together like it did in the past. We're not living in the 1930s anymore, where resilience was a badge of honor. Nowadays, it's a different story. People are quick to anger, quick to point fingers, quick to demand their share of the pie without understanding the cost. Combine this simmering discontent with the looming specter of the worst economic crisis in recent memory, and you've got a recipe for serious unrest, not just in the US, but across the globe. We've seen this movie before, haven't we? Politicians pointing fingers, blaming outsiders for the woes at home, while discontent bubbles over into the streets. It's a tale as old as time, yet somehow we keep falling into the same trap. We're living in an era where history's lessons are readily available, yet we seem determined to ignore them. Well, here's a wake-up call, folks. Unless we start heeding the warnings of the past, we're destined to repeat its mistakes, and the consequences could be catastrophic. Give you a glimpse of what lies ahead if we continue down this path. Governments and central banks have been playing fast and loose with the printing presses, churning out money like there's no tomorrow. It's a reckless game of excess, and they seem to think there are no consequences. But history tells a different story. Every binge has its end, and the higher we soar on this wave of artificial wealth, the more devastating the crash will be when it inevitably comes crashing down. We've become desensitized to the astronomical figures thrown around, but make no mistake, there's a limit to how far this charade can go. Trillions have become the new normal, but what comes after that? It's a question that should give us all pause. If we don't pump the brakes soon, we might find ourselves entering uncharted territory where financial terms like quadrillion and zombie currency become all too familiar. It's time to wake up and smell the coffee before we find ourselves drowning in a sea of hyperinflation and economic ruin.